just like give me, I don't, like I said, when I met you, just like some background, like where you're from. Are you from here? Where'd you go to school? Stuff like that.
So I'm originally from Houston. I graduated from high school in a town called Humble High School. It's in Northeast Houston. I came to Baylor. I majored in political science and Slavic and Eastern European studies, and I minored in history and took a lot of Russian language classes.
Wow, that's so cool.
And I went to law school hoping to become a traveling founding father, essentially. I wanted to go write constitutions for former Soviet bloc countries, help them establish justice systems and establish the framework for effective government. And so that was my goal going into law school. So I thought, well, if I want to do that, then I need to go to law school on the East Coast. And so I went to law school in New York City at New York Law School. And while I was there, my last year, I got involved in the criminal law clinic. And in that capacity, we got our third year bar card so I could practice law as a student, as a law school student. And you worked with the Legal Aid Society of New York. So again, these are people who can't afford attorneys, indigent individuals. And so I found myself in a New York City courtroom as a third year law school student, and I absolutely fell in love with being in a courtroom.
Yeah.
That's where law gets practiced. And so I knew after that I had to be in a courtroom. And so I interned with the district attorney's office in Houston. Again, because that was home, so that would always be an option. They offered me a job there, and I was a prosecutor there for 3.5 years. There is a common thread in my employment history. You will see that I am insubordinate. And it's true, I am insubordinate, and I wear that like a badge of honor, because I don't believe that just because this is the way we've always done something, that we need to continue doing it that way.
Yeah.
If there's a better way to do it, let's do it that way. Or at least let's try. And so I am known for questioning everything.
Yeah.
So I left the district attorney's office in Harris County under less than amicable terms. Wrote out my resignation on a piece of paper and handed it to the first assistant, and stormed out of his office. And I practiced criminal defense in Houston for a while. It was an eye-opening experience because up to that point, I had only been a prosecutor. And so I would see all these files in my office, and my mentality was, oh, another file. Oh, another case. Oh, another case.
Yeah.
As a defense attorney, these people come and sit in your office, and you have to talk to mom on the phone who's crying because she can't get in touch with her son in jail, and she's scared to death. And so it was this paradigm shift of, oh my God, all those files are actually people.
Yeah.
With families. And like we were talking earlier, all these collateral consequences. It affects everybody you know when you get charged with a crime. And so I did that for a few years. I really enjoyed it, but I missed being a prosecutor.
Yeah.
And so there was an opening here in McLennan County for a prosecutor. I came and met Abel, interviewed with him, took that job, and I rose through that office pretty quickly because of my experience. I was pretty quickly named the chief of the 19th District Court, so I supervised other prosecutors, and I was responsible for the most serious cases that were pending in that court. And so I did that for, I guess, from the time Abel hired me to the time he lost his primary election, and he fired me, also for being insubordinate, which I was. And then I went into private practice again. Okay. This time I work now with Vic Feazell, who is an incredibly interesting character. If you don't know anything about him, Netflix did a special called The Confession Killer.
Wow.
And he features very heavily in that documentary. So
that's awesome. Yeah,
check out The Confession Killer.
Yeah. But
Vic was also the district attorney here in McLennan County in the 1980s. And so he has a very unique perspective on things. But yeah, now I do criminal defense work and some personal injury work.
Okay, cool.
But I still miss being a prosecutor.
Yeah. I was
Awesome.
kind of sharing with him that I am really unfamiliar with the political system, as I feel like a lot of my age group and demographic is, and that's kind of the the demographic that we're trying to reach out to with Pro-Choice Waco,
Right.
because those are the majority of people who aren't voting, and that's who we
Correct.
need to show up. So going back to what it is that you would do if you win the election. The election's in November. Okay. Do you feel like some of that is just like you need to hire more people? Is that, or is it you feel like it's more just like the inner systems?
So, people like to talk about kind of systemic issues with the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
What I tell people is my experience as a prosecutor has taught me that the criminal justice system is systemically inefficient. And so what happens is that disproportionately affects people of color, but also people of lower socioeconomic class.
100%. Yeah.
And so it's not just a systemically racist system. That's not the whole conversation, or even really the jumping off point of the conversation. Our criminal justice system has become classist in a way.
Yes.
And so people have to sit in jail awaiting trial because they can't afford to make bond.
Yeah.
So you sit in jail over here for 900 days out on Highway 6, and then you get to your day in court finally, and the prosecutor reduces your case to, a Class C ticket, or dismisses your case altogether.
Yeah.
And what for? Why did you sit 900 days in jail only to get that resolution?
Yeah, and then for someone who is in a lower class financially, that is a huge difference. Your life can literally fall apart.
Correct.
And the lives around you, we are all kind of dependent on each other. So
absolutely. And I think that's people outside the criminal justice community may not understand, is that being arrested for a crime and charged with a crime is bad enough. But there are all these collateral consequences that happen.
Yeah.
If you're sitting over in county for 30 days, even on a misdemeanor case, you're probably going to lose your job.
Yeah.
You're probably going to lose your apartment or your house.
Payments. You're going to be missing all kinds of payments.
You're going to miss car payments. So if and when you get out of jail, there's your life has been ruined.
Yeah.
Because of just the charge, just the arrest.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, if you break the law, there should be consequences.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But if we're not moving people through our system efficiently, it looks broken.
Yeah.
And it ends up violating the due process rights of people charged with a crime.
Yeah, 100%. That's so true. So who are you running against for November?
Sure. My opponent's his name is Josh Teetons.
Okay.
He is a local criminal defense attorney. He has been a criminal defense attorney his entire career. Never been a prosecutor, which is what sets us apart. I like Josh. He's a friend of mine. I honestly don't have anything negative to say about him.
Yeah.
I think he's a good guy. I think he's a really good lawyer. But he doesn't have any prosecutorial experience. Our last two DAs, Barry Johnson, Abel Reyna, had never been a prosecutor before they took over the DA's office. And both of those administrations ended terribly for the citizens of this county. And so I think we have to ask ourselves, how many times are we going to continue to elect a district attorney who's never spent a day as a prosecutor?
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to continue to get this same problem
It's
over
so
and over
funny
again.
that you say that, because I'm a server, and I've been a waitress my whole life, and I kind of feel the same way, like when I work at a new restaurant and I get I've worked for managers who have zero serving experience, but then want to come in and try to tell me how to do my job, and it's just like, you've never been on the floor in the thick of it, and it makes a huge difference because you know the perspective,
right?
You know the background of it.
Well, and it goes back to because that's a great analogy, and it goes back to knowing what tools are at your disposal.
Mm-hmm.
You, as the server in that scenario, you know the most efficient way to do your job.
Yeah.
You've already found that out.
Yeah.
You don't need someone coming in and telling you, especially someone who's never done the job, coming in telling you how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what we've had with these last two administrations. And I think, again, that's what we would have if Josh got elected. Again, not saying anything bad about Josh, but he's just never been a prosecutor. So
Yeah.
we run into that same kind of, does he know what tools are at his disposal? Does he know the best way to move a case through the system from a prosecutor's perspective? And I think that's where my experience really really matters.
So I was going to ask, but you kind of answered it. Like, do you feel like that's your selling point? Like, if that's your bottom line, is like you have experience in this specifically?
Correct. I think in an age of, and I know I'm going to start to sound like an old man, but in an age of like the 24-hour news cycle and this need to constantly put out content, what we've done is taken politics and really made it about something other than what it was originally for. And let me tell you what I mean by that. At the end of the day, elections are job interviews. You're going to the public, to the people, and saying, hey, you have this job available. I would like to take that job. I'm the most qualified candidate for that job. Here's why.
Yeah.
And so that's what I tell people in this race, because again, I don't have anything bad to say about Josh, but I'm more qualified.
Yeah.
I've been a prosecutor. In the 7 days I recently went back as first assistant, where I was hired and fired within a week. I mean, in that time alone, I'd managed to put in an organizational chart and restructure some things at the office. Basic things.
Yeah.
Basic
But that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. And you have to start that stuff right now.
Yeah.
If you really were interested in moving backlogs of cases, you got to start that stuff right now.
So, if and when you get elected, how long is that term?
So it's a 4-year term.
Okay.
The district attorney's office is a 4-year term. It is technically a state office.
Okay.
But we live in a county where our DA's office represents the entire county. You can go out to West Texas and a district attorney might represent several counties based on population. We're lucky enough here that we have one DA, one county. But yeah, it's a 4-year term. And then the DA's office, each DA can then bring in, their own staff and their own,
cool.
what they call a first assistant. That's the next person in charge. And so those things, there's often high turnover rates when you go from one administration to the other. But currently they're down probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 lawyers over there.
Oh, really? So they're not even fully staffed.
Correct.
Wow.
And it's hard right now at this point in a political cycle for the district attorney to hire anybody, because how do you jump onto a ship where you don't know what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's so true.
At the time of the election. And so the individual prosecutors over there that are going to court every day, that are really trying to do their best, my heart goes out to them, because I used to be one of them. But they're trying to keep their head above water.
Yeah.
They have so many cases.
There's no progress. It's just like staying in one place.
Correct.
Doggy paddling.
Exactly. And they're I don't know. My heart goes out to them. They need our support, because they're the ones who are actually going into court every week and taking dangerous people off the streets.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Yeah. I can't even imagine that workload. I mean, I know everybody kind of the state of life right now is everyone's kind of shorthanded, but that is pretty crazy. Those statistics you gave, you said there's only 2 federal, what was it?
So in McLennan County, there are 2 felony district courts. Those are the only 2 courts that can handle felony cases in this county. Now, there's another district court that McLennan County just got as a result of some stuff done by the legislature. And so we're going to get another district court. And we also just got another county court. Those are the courts that handle misdemeanor cases.
Okay, yeah.
And so when you expand like that and get additional courts, you're going to need additional lawyers to staff those courts.
Yeah.
And so I think going in, immediately, I have to start asking the commissioner's court for more prosecutors.
Yeah.
And that means more staff. But the DA's office is dependent so much on, just like I said before, I know I keep gushing over it, but those individuals that show up every day and do that hard work, because they are they are drowning under an incredibly heavy caseload.
Yeah.
So.
And I know this is probably a given, but again, I'm just asking questions that other people might not know the answer to. So those caseloads and people who are stuck in the system who can't afford bail or, all those resources, we're paying for that, right? The city of Waco, like our taxes are paying for X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely. So everything that happens at that courthouse is taxpayer funded, and everything that happens out at that jail is taxpayer funded. And so when we're holding people in jail for long periods of time, those are taxpayer dollars that are going to those ventures. And that's, again, as district attorney, yes, I want to move cases through the system to make it more efficient because that's what's right if you're charged with a crime. But you are also a keeper of a budget for that office, which right now I think is a little bit over $4 million. But I mean, that is taxpayer dollars that you have to be responsible with, that you have to be are used sparingly. But if you need more prosecutors, we need more prosecutors.
Yeah.
And so we got to hire them.
Yeah.
You got to be a good shepherd with tax dollars.
100%.
And so that would be something that's top of my list, is making sure that not only the inefficiencies in the courtroom, but anywhere we can save money on the budget, let's do it.
Yeah.
There's asset forfeiture funds. That's monies and property that is seized when somebody gets arrested and convicted of a crime. There's a fund that's sitting out there with money that the DA's office can use to buy equipment and stuff for our office. But I know one of the good things that Abel did was he spent a lot of that money on, I think, upgrading some servers, either at Waco PD or the sheriff's office. And so we could use that money to make the system better.
Yeah.
And it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Nobody's using it.
Yeah. And I feel like that, I mean, obviously not to get too political, but rather, it sounds like that whatever your political party is, the bottom line of here in Waco is that you're just trying to make the system work.
Correct.
And do its job. Like the system was created to prosecute people at a timely manner, and it's not happening right now.
Right.
And I feel like that the reason I asked the taxpayer question is because everybody can relate. Everybody pays taxes, so we definitely should be paying more attention to what is being used with that money and who's in charge of it.
Well, and to go to your broader question, I hate that we even think about the DA's office in political terms.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned to you earlier the city council race. That was a great race because they're nonpartisan.
Yeah.
You just go in there and you tell people what your position is, and there's no party question. And so you go in and you advocate for more sidewalks and better schools and things like that. And so a district attorney's job is so not political.
Yeah.
It's a, let's look at the facts.
Mm-hmm.
What do the facts tell us? Let's make a decision based on the facts. And what scares me, especially with what I see in like the overturn of Roe v. Wade and the threat of a woman's right to choose, what scares me about that is there are certain people on the political spectrum who are attempting to weaponize the district attorney's offices across this country and the courthouses across this country to affect a political goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, we already are experiencing a terrible lack of trust in our criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And if we start electing district attorneys who are going to take that office and use it as a tool to accomplish a political goal, we're only going to further undermine the justice system.
Yeah.
We're only going to cause people to lose even more faith.
Yeah.
Because then, just like everything else, it becomes just another, I don't know, politician's decision or whim who gets prosecuted.
Yeah. And I feel like that was kind of what, like, going to that, I know that I talked to Jessica about it, and we were, concerned with that because one of our goals at Pro-Choice Waco is to decriminalize abortion. Right. And that just means, we don't want that to be the main focus of, what our criminal justice system here in Waco is focused on.
Well, and I can tell you, point blank, that my priority as district attorney will not involve in any way, shape, or form hunting down doctors or women who who choose on their own that their best course of medical treatment is to have an abortion.
Yeah.
I don't see that as being a good use of resources. We were just talking about taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
We have kids literally dying out here in the street from gun violence.
Yeah, so bad.
Somebody come help me with those kids.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I want as the district attorney. Once I get gun violence in this town under control, once I get the flow of serious opioids and methamphetamines under control in this county, then we'll have a conversation about this other thing. But why, when we have kids dying in the street, do you or does anybody want me, the district attorney, to divert resources away from solving that problem so that I can, like I said, go out and hunt down doctors who are, again, they are put in a terrible position because they're trying to do the best for their patients.
Yeah.
And, I mean, my personal opinion of the issue is that those decisions, like any medical decision, should be the choice of the individual, the woman, her family, and her doctor.
Yeah.
That's who should be making that decision.
Yeah.
The government has no business in our doctor's office. And I often wonder where our small government Republican friends are.
Yeah.
Because why do they want the government in their doctor's office saying which medical procedures you can and can't have? Yeah. And so I am pro-choice because I think it means freedom. Yeah. Choice is freedom. 100%. And last time I looked, we lived in the United States of America. Yeah, and, definitely. So home of the free. Yeah. That was a great point. So my priority as district attorney would not be to seek out or in any way kind of prioritize those types of cases. Yeah. I'll tell you, you don't want a district attorney who's going to categorically say, no, that I'm going to never prosecute this type of case. Yeah. Or I'm going to always prosecute this type of case. Yeah, because it's never black and white. Correct. Yeah. So you want a prosecutor that's going to look at a case. So if the sheriff's office or Waco PD brings me a case that they think violates, the Texas trigger law that's going to go into effect, I will review the case file. Yeah. And at the end of the day, goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. At the end of the day, as the elected district attorney, it's my decision. Yeah. And so I would make the decision about whether or not to go forward on a case like that. One thing I also have to remind people of is the trigger law that would go into effect makes it a felony. It's a felony offense. Yeah. And again, like we were talking about earlier, in order to be convicted of a felony, you have to go to the grand jury. Yeah. And a grand jury is made up of citizens of Waco. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I still think that if a DA, whether it's myself or Josh, if we presented a case like that to a group of McLennan County citizens that were sitting on the grand jury, I don't know that they would indict that person. Yeah. I think there's a very vocal group of people, but I don't know that they would indict a doctor in those circumstances. Yeah. So while we're on the topic, the other thing that concerns me a little bit is the way that states are moving to find ways to criminalize the woman for maybe traveling across state lines. Yeah, I've heard that. To get care. And again, we have enough laws on the books. Yeah. I don't know why we need more laws. I want fewer laws. Yeah. I think I'm all for smaller government. And so every time the government makes a new law, I have a few less rights. Yeah. And I want more rights, not less rights. 100%. Yeah. So there's that. Yeah, that was such a good point. And you covered it very, very clearly. And I feel like that is definitely something that all people could benefit from, is like you said, like why would we use our resources for something like that which is a great point, because I feel very strongly about the same way of gun violence in our city. Right. It's
bad, and I feel like a lot of people don't really know exactly how bad it is, but it's definitely, you know, young people who are suffering, and I agree. I feel like that's definitely a priority.
Right. It has to be. There's over 60 murders sitting over at the district attorney's office waiting to be tried. That's where the resources need to be focused, on those violent crimes. And the reason that's so important, and it goes to the broader question of how to reduce crime in a community. The current system, as we were kind of talking about earlier, where somebody could sit in the McLennan County Jail for 1,000 days awaiting their trial. I believe all criminals, to a certain extent, do a cost-benefit analysis before they commit a crime.
Yeah.
Is it going to be worth it to commit this crime? And if you know that the consequences for committing a crime aren't going to come until years down the road.
Yeah.
I'm a criminal defense attorney now. I have clients who have been on bond for almost 5 years.
Wow.
So if you know you can commit a crime and sit out on bond for 5 years, you're not dissuaded from committing that crime.
Yeah.
So if you really want to reduce crime in the community, it's not just about sending everybody to prison for life.
Yeah.
Some people deserve to go to prison for life, and I may say what might be unpopular is some people deserve the death penalty.
Yeah.
There are crimes that I believe are deserving of the death penalty. But the focus should be on these violent crimes, not on going after doctors.
Yeah.
I mean, so my absolute focus is going to be on those violent crimes, because if you really want to bring down that crime level, people have to know that the consequences are coming soon.
Yeah.
Like if you commit a crime, you need to know that 6 months from now, there's going to be a consequence for that.
Yeah.
The example I always give, and I'm sure people get tired of hearing it, is a baby touching a hot stove.
Yeah.
You know, when a baby touches a hot stove, if they don't feel that pain for 5 months, 6 months, a year from now, they're going to keep touching that stove.
Yeah.
But if they feel that pain immediately, they're not going to touch that stove again.
Yeah.
And it has to be the same way with the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to reduce crime, it's not about stocking the prison with more prisoners.
Yeah.
It's about getting the consequences of someone's decision to them quicker.
Yeah.
And I think that's the easiest way to reduce crime. And we can't do that if we have a backlog of thousands and thousands of cases.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Like if they know they're not going to have to see a judge and be prosecuted for who knows how long.
Right. And they're sitting out on bond, you know, so they're going home every night to their family. Now, like you and I talked about earlier, being charged with a crime comes with a lot of collateral consequences. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to make it seem like, oh, it's easy for someone to sit out on bond, and that these people still lose their jobs. They still have trouble finding employment if you're under indictment.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can imagine that employers aren't exactly eager to hire, you know, people who are under indictment. So I don't want to be dismissive of the consequences that occur from being charged with a crime, but sitting out on bond, awaiting your day in court, is a lot better than sitting out your 10 or 15-year TDC sentence down in Huntsville. Yeah. I mean, so people will take that all the time.
100%. Yeah.
So the big thing, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the nugget of your question that is scaring me right now is the weaponization of our local district attorney's offices throughout the state, and the criminal justice apparatus in general, but the courthouse, you know, the weaponization of these institutions to accomplish a political goal. And my opinion on that is if you were going to vote for a DA for the purpose of affecting a political goal, to use the district attorney's office as a tool to affect that political goal, then vote for the other guy, because I'm not going to do that. The courthouse is supposed to be a crucible for truth and justice, like the old Superman TV show used to say, truth, justice, and the American way. It is not a tool to accomplish a political goal. And so any attempt by any political party or any interest group to try and get a district attorney to weaponize that office is dangerous for everybody.
Yeah.
So as district attorney, my promise to people is I will thoroughly evaluate every case that a police department brings to me, but that my first priority is getting violence under control in this community.
Yeah.
It has to be safe for you to take your kids to HEB.
Yeah.
And if it's not safe to take your kids to HEB, the district attorney's office has failed. And if they are spending and devoting resources to hunting down doctors or hunting down victims of rape who have chosen to terminate a pregnancy, or as we were just discussing, if they are now seeking to criminalize going across state lines to seek this medical care, I have no interest, and I think it has no business in the district attorney's office to go after these women.
Yeah.
That this is, again, like any medical procedure, this is a decision to be made between the individual, her doctor, and her family. Mm-hmm. And it has the government has no business there.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand, at the risk of repeating myself, I just don't understand where all of our small government conservative Republicans are on this issue.
Yeah.
Why do they keep inviting the government into our bedrooms?
Yeah.
Into our medicine cabinets, into our doctor's offices? Mm-hmm. Every time a new law is passed, we lose a little freedom.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
Yeah.
And so I have no interest in going after those doctors or those women. I think it is a waste of taxpayer resources, and the DA's office is taxpayer funded. And if kids are dying in the street and you have a district attorney's office or a district attorney that is more interested in prosecuting doctors and women for seeking medical treatment, then you have voted for the wrong district attorney.
Yeah.
No, I think education is the silver bullet to every problem that we have in this country. So the more information and the more correct information you can get in front of people, the better. I want as much information as possible before I make a decision on something. That's why I say when we get a case from a police officer or from a sheriff's deputy, I want to read that case thoroughly. I want as much information as possible. And so absolutely, let's spend as much time as we can educating people. Let's talk about why the district attorney's office in particular does not need to be a partisan race. This is a race about truth and facts, and that's it. It's not a race about, like I said, accomplishing a particular political goal. So yes, let's educate as many people as we can.
Awesome. Well, so nice to meet you. Thank
Yes.
you so much. I feel like I have a way better understanding.
Wonderful.
And now I can share that information with people. So thank
Great.
you so much. It was
Thank
really
you.
nice meeting
It was
you.
really nice meeting you too, Jade.